Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And today is sort of a little follow-up to last week's podcast. We're going to kind of go a little bit deeper, but it's called Nothing Succeeds Like Success.
That's true.
Which seems evident.
Right. And it's an idea that is in a lot of the inspirational literature and self-help literature, but it's true. It's kind of like when you're playing guitar on the street. I don't know if any of you've had this experience before, but you put a couple dollars in to start things. You need a starter dollar so that people think, well, maybe there's something worthwhile.
Somebody contributed. I should too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have kids, this will be a good episode because this is kind of born out of, especially if you have teenagers, because this idea was kind of born out of, us trying to help Thomas's son along right now. So.
Right. I have and I can't because.
Yes.
I mean,
we have a negative child. Can you believe it?
Yeah. It's kind of like he has an idea about what he can do for the future, and then he thinks of all the ways it can crash and burn, and then he does nothing.
That's pretty much it.
And I've been there, oddly enough.
Yeah.
When I was a high school student, I was not a good student. And basically, I thought I was an idiot. And I had a parent, I don't want to disparage him, but here goes. I had a parent who was hard on my self-esteem, let's put it that way. And
a step-parent, actually.
A step-parent. And to be fair to him, I was not an easy child to raise. I'm kind of a space case. I'm a little bit, I forget a lot of stuff and I lose a lot of stuff.
I'm just sitting over here biting my tongue so hard through this episode so far.
Yeah, but these are my childhood wounds.
Yes.
It's just, and sometimes they still haunt me. But I graduated from high school with a 2.5 average and very little belief that I could ever succeed academically. But I had a Jewish father, so I was either going to be a lawyer or a doctor.
Right.
Okay. It wasn't a question of whether I was going to go to college.
Yeah.
It was a question of which college and what could I get into. So I applied. I mean, when I was a senior in high school, I took an SAT prep course, and my very first success was that I knocked my SATs out of the park. And it was mostly, I owe it all to that course that I took. It was basically a refresher on everything I learned in high school.
Right.
And it was a very good course. It was something like 6 weeks. And it just, I emerged from this course a really good test taker. I didn't realize this. Okay. So I aced the SATs. I got into UCSD as a freshman. And when I got to UCSD, I had zero confidence in my ability to succeed academically. And I took my fall semester. This was in the fall of 1979, back when people still could afford college. I mean, it was amazing. That's another story.
I was at grade school, but that's also another story.
Yeah. And I got to the end of these courses. I did my best, and in college, I was surprised because they give you 5 books. Each course that I took, I had 16 units, which is 4 courses, and each one had 5 full-length books to read in 10 weeks, and midterms and all that. And there's just no way. So I actually took 3 courses that semester, that first quarter. So I had 12 units. And I got to the end, and I got my grades, and it's like, oh my goodness. And I opened my grades, and there sat 2 B's and an A. I think I took anthropology, and I just took things that I might be interested. I had a music class. That was one of them.
That was probably your A.
I forgot, I don't think it was. I think the anthropology one was.
Huh.
But I found that course interesting.
Mm.
And the point is that the motivation from getting those grades got me through my 4 years of college, which I crammed into 5. Yeah, and truly, that was the first success that I'd ever had outside of the home or whatever.
Yeah. Well, even in school at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And it had a huge effect on me. It turned my college career around. And I mean, I'm not a 4-point student.
Right.
Because I drank a lot of beer in college.
Smoked a lot of marijuana.
I didn't smoke marijuana in college, not that much.
Not that much. Okay.
Yeah, but I did drink a lot of beer, and that was what everybody did in those days when we were in college. And it probably still, right?
Yes, I think that still happens a lot of college.
Probably still. So, I could have done a lot better had I really applied myself.
Right.
But what got me through was that I found out, number one, I'm a pretty good test taker.
Right.
Number two, I'm a pretty good writer.
Right.
And I took some courses in writing. They had bonehead English. And believe it or not, those courses were really helpful to me. And I started having success. And, I made the dean's list a couple times. And I had a professor once read my paper aloud to the class because she thought it was such a good paper. And it was like, wow. And the success it has a snowball effect to where you can do that. And the point is for the podcast, because this is a long introduction, like last time, is that if you're getting a divorce, you're at a low point in life. Yeah. And I remember that. It's just a low point in life because, from the guy's perspective.
Well, it's failure.
Yeah, it's failure.
It feels like failure is what I should say. It's not that it necessarily is. It's a lesson, but it feels like failure. And I think that's true for just about everybody, man, woman, whoever.
Right. And so I felt like, I'd married this gal and I'd attempted to build a life. We had the 2 little kids and I thought, I may not be the greatest lawyer in the world and I may not be the greatest whatever in the world, but I know I'm a good dad and I know I'm a good husband, and I thought.
But she didn't think so, apparently.
Apparently she didn't think I was such a good husband because she left me and I was devastated by that.
Yeah.
It just destroyed my self-esteem.
Self-image, yeah.
Which, in a way is the engine that drives me to success.
Right.
Is my feeling that I'm a good person and I can do this. I can deliver services that are valuable in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I sort of had a similar, thing. I very much, I got married very young at 17. I grew up in Kentucky, very traditional household. Both my grandfathers are Baptist ministers. So, being a wife and a mom and all those kinds of things is very, very much became a part of my self-identity. Now, I don't know that when I got married, I really had this huge streak of domesticity or anything. But I think after my first son was born, that's really when I just loved that child more than I had ever known loving another human being.
It's funny because he's so rotten. I'm just kidding. He's not. He's in the other room over
he's
there.
At his moments.
He's producing the podcast.
but once he was born, that was a huge shift for me, and my family became my big focus. And so, I had part-time jobs and did different things along, and didn't really work full time again until they were a little bit older and in school and all that. But very much, identified with, the family and the household and, work was something I had to go do even when I was doing it. But really, the focus of my life was my family. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I mean, I think some people are very career focused and that's kind of their thing. But I think particularly, again, for women, a lot of times your family and your children is a huge piece of your identity, even if you have a significant career. And so the loss of that for me was
Right.
very devastating as well. And my ex-husband had affairs. And so it's just it was this huge hit to my self-esteem where it was like, well, why this person?
Yeah.
And why am I not good enough? And what makes you want to go off with them and leave our family? And, I had a lot of why her, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, at the time you're comparing yourself to that other person.
Because she had the parts and was willing to let him use them, I guess.
Well, but I mean, I had the parts too, if you want to get that technical about it. But I think that the big thing was just, it is that comparison of like, what makes this person better than me? Or what makes me inferior to this person? But fast forward and, like you said, nothing succeeds like success. To now have a relationship that is successful and does work and does meet my needs and hopefully
Not all the time.
meets his needs as well. No, some days you're a jerk, but today's not that day, thank goodness. But what happens is that in retrospect, I understand that my ex-husband's behaviors around the affairs and all that, it really wasn't about me.
Right.
And it really wasn't about her either.
Right.
It was more about him and his own self-esteem and things he needed to do to try to get to feel better.
Right.
Because he was in a low place.
Right.
And I didn't have enough insight at that stage to really recognize what was happening.
Yeah. We should do something on self-esteem because in a way, this is a complete aside to what we're talking about, but self-esteem is on the one hand something that our culture's addicted to.
Right.
It's just everything's about not
Me, myself, and I.
And not making your children sad and all that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it really does drive a lot of human behavior is how we feel about ourselves.
Right.
And what we feel we're contributing to the world or to the marketplace, whether we think we're good people.
Right. And when we started talking about this episode, I told you at the beginning it was born out of, like kind of something we're dealing with one of the kids. And, one of Thomas's sons is having a similar struggle to what he had. He hasn't had much academic success in high school. It's been a struggle. He doesn't like school. He doesn't even like the social aspect of school. Fortunately, the other one
and he starts college this week.
Tomorrow is his first day of class.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And so Thomas and I are going, how do we help him get a win in this?
Yeah.
How do we help him recognize that he can succeed, that he has it within himself? And as we started talking about this and dug into it more and more, a lot of his struggle has been self-esteem. He's
Right.
very negative. His internal talk is negative. He beats himself up a lot. He tells himself how he isn't going to succeed, can't succeed.
Yeah. So why try?
So I just won't even try. Yes, I'll just lay here like this.
Yeah. He's almost like a caricature of that. I'm not going to succeed, so why try attitude? I mean,
and you can't make me, darn it.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna look at this iPhone until my eyes fall out.
Yeah. And incidentally, like we've had periods where, they've lost their phone for whatever, punishment for breaking whatever rules or whatever. And they're like totally different kids.
Yeah.
When you take that phone away, I would invite you to try that as your punishment next time, because just to see the difference. And so I think that we have to really be aware of how much that the social media and all those things, all the things that the kids are dealing with that are
I
hitting.
used to beat the children with the phone because they're very sturdy.
All the things that are hitting their self-esteem that frankly we didn't even have to deal with growing up.
Yeah.
We didn't have phones and social media and everybody's picture plastered all over, and
Right.
That you didn't have that. And
Right.
so those couple of experiences have made us more aware and trying to be trying to engage the kids more and keep them
Right.
off their phone and do more family oriented activities and all that kind of stuff.
But I guess the question in this podcast is, how do we get you a win?
Right.
How do we get you a win? And believe it or not, your divorce, as low, I know it's a low point, as low as it is, it's a target-rich environment for wins.
Right.
First of all, getting up out of bed and actually going outside can be a win, right?
I say that. I had days where getting out of bed and getting my shower was a huge accomplishment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so part of it is, you got to lower the bar a little bit to see things, to see areas where you're being strong and where you're facing down adversity and triumphing.
Right.
So one of the things you could do is make a resolution to change the way you see your ex. And that was kind of an important thing for me personally. And I was working with a coach that told me, and I've told this story on the podcast before, but he criticized me because every time my ex-wife would call, there was a thing on the phone. In fact, it happened during the session, right? And I was sitting in his office, and she called me, and the B word pops up, right? And so I showed
You
it
had
to him.
saved her as a choice word
like,
in your phone.
Ha 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 ha! Look what I did! Isn't this funny? Like I was the first person ever thought of that.
Yeah.
So, and he encouraged me to change that because he was trying to get me to reframe her as, a fellow lost human being, instead of just, this horrible person that broke my heart.
Right.
We're all trying to scratch out a simple, pleasant tune without breaking our necks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, life is like that. And we have to reframe that. And for me, that was a major win in my life when I was able to have some compassion for my ex-wife.
Right. Right. And let me just quickly remind you, because I know this comes up, when we say having compassion or having charity for the other person, that does not mean not having boundaries.
Right.
That's not the same thing. Sometimes people
That's
think,
another win you can have,
That's
is
right.
setting up, if you're, particularly for the gals out there,
mm-hmm.
boundaries. There are some things up with which I should not put.
Right. You're right. Just being able to say, no, I'm not going to help you with that. No, I'm not going to do that. Or, and not saying no for no reason, just to say no. But I think that a lot of times, especially in the coaching practice that I have, I'm dealing with people who are often continuing their marital pattern of picking up slack for the other person and saying yes even when they don't want to.
Right. Don't you have a story around that?
Which causes resentment,
It's another one you've already told, right? About Daryl, and I'm sorry
Yeah.
I mentioned his name.
Yeah, that's okay. You can call me out. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, I always say this took years for me to be able to have good boundaries and to actually, what the boundaries did is they relieved my anxiety, my stress, when Thomas is talking about getting these little wins, a boundary might seem like that's nothing. That's just so low on the totem pole. But honestly, when you're
Right.
in the very beginning stages,
My ex-husband called and I didn't answer the phone.
Right.
I let it go to voicemail.
Right. When you're in the beginning of stages of this
Yeah.
and you're struggling so bad, those types of things take huge emotional control and self-control. And so that can be a huge win. I didn't give in to my ex today, even though I wanted to. I got my shower. I was present with my children.
Mm-hmm.
All those things that in the beginning we're really struggling with. And, this took me, I always tell people, about 8 years, honestly, to get to where I had good boundaries with my ex-husband. And the tipping point for me was my mother had passed away, and I had just gotten back from the funeral. I was exhausted. We live in California. My mother lived in Kentucky. And I was exhausted, very little sleep for several days. And, Thomas and I had taught a workshop. Like, I slept like 4 hours and got up and taught a workshop that day. And we come home and it's like, okay, well, let's just go grab some dinner because I'm too exhausted, to cook or do anything. And so we drove down to the Panda Express down the street. Us and his 2 boys, I believe, were with us. And I get this call from my ex-husband of, I ran out of gas on the side of the road. Can you come help me? And my question was, do you have money for gas? And he was like, no, why would I be calling you if I had money for gas? And I don't know, something in me just snapped. I don't know if it was just the culmination of just being so tired and having lost my mom and being in this horrible grief and just dealing with his shenanigans for so long. And I just said, I'm not coming.
Yeah. Oh, look at the time.
Gotta go. So sorry. My phone's ringing. Gotta go. But, that sounds real simple when I tell it as that kind of story, but that wasn't a simple act for me. That was 8 years of trying to figure out how to gain the strength to draw the boundary.
Right.
And the way you do it is just by doing that first thing.
You got to have
that gets you that little win.
Got a notch. Got to get a notch in your belt.
That's right. And as you do more and more and more, you get stronger and stronger and stronger, and it becomes easier. And you build your own self-esteem and self-confidence through that. And it starts to be like, you know what? I can do this.
Yeah.
I don't need the other person. I don't need whatever. All I need is me. And I think that's one of the things that is different in our relationship.
Yeah.
For me, is because my previous marriage was very codependent and I really felt a huge, like I couldn't function without him.
Yeah.
And, with you, I don't feel like I can't function without you. I love you. I want you here. Like, we have a good marriage and all those things, but I don't feel like I can't breathe if you're not here.
Right.
And I remember having those feelings. When he was first gone. This
morning, I couldn't find the coffee. So maybe I need you more than you need me. I got up this morning. We were in an Airbnb. It's like, I looked through every drawer except the one it was in.
Yeah, we're in Idaho visiting the kids. And so we're in this Airbnb. And it's funny because before we went to bed, there's like a little side coffee bar, like, upper and lower cabinets and a little coffee counter. So there was a coffee pot and a Keurig, both on that counter. So I opened all the drawers and I'm like, oh, cool. Coffee filters, Keurig pods, there's coffee beans, but there's also a little container up that already has a little bit of the already ground, the grounds where the beans have been ground. And there's the little grinders up there right beside the little thing of ground stuff. And then I come out. Thomas came out here before me. I was in the shower, and then I come out, and he's like, oh, well, I don't see any coffee filters, so I had to use a paper towel for the filter, and I couldn't, there's beans over there, but I couldn't find any actual coffee, so I dug through the cabinets and found a blender and ground
Hey, that was very resourceful.
my coffee beans. So he gets an A for resourcefulness, but he definitely
here's
gets
a Keurig right here. I found it after 2 seconds of looking.
Well, I said, there's a Keurig over here, and he goes, but there's no pods, and I'm like, yes, there is. There's the whole drawer here that's got like 20 of them.
I looked in every drawer except that one. So anyway,
He did not have success with his coffee this morning.
I have another story, and this is another one I've told before, but I'm going to tell it again anyway.
Go ahead.
Before, and a lot of you are trapped in this dynamic where you have repeated negative conversations with your ex. And that's for both the guys and the gals, and it's negative, and each one drags you down. And I remember we were driving to pick up the kids we had just picked up the kids at daycare, and they have these little blankets with heads on. We call them loveys,
Little bear head,
And,
yeah.
and both the kids were very attached to their loveys. And the older child had his lovey, but we somehow left the daycare without the younger child's lovey. And the daycare was in,
It was closed by the time we figured out
It
that
was-
the lovey wasn't there.
it was closed by the time we figured out. So I called my ex-wife because each one of us has one of these loveys,
A set.
a set. Each one of us had a set. And I asked her if we could borrow the lovey. And and then, the lecture started. So, if you hadn't, if you'd been thinking ahead, you wouldn't have left. And
You
I'm
keep track of everything. You wouldn't lose everything all the time.
Yeah, and it's like I habitually sit there and feel like a bad person when she's doing that.
Yeah.
And that one day, I had this epiphany, and I held my phone out so that Tammy could see it because she drives the car, and I hung up on her with drama.
Yeah. He held his
In the
phone
middle
out
of
and
her
looked at it
sentence.
like, I don't really have to do this, do I? Yeah.
But it was a turning point for me.
Right.
It was like, I don't have to stay in the old pattern.
Right.
I can do something different. Now,
Right.
of course, we had to figure out the lovey.
We did.
But, that's a small price to pay. The harangue and the speech about what a lousy person you are is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so getting yourself out of those patterns, I think particularly when you're going through a divorce and you're, let's face it, I mean, your interaction with your ex is negative almost for everyone, man, woman, it doesn't matter. The interaction with the other person is almost always very, very negative because, if you weren't having negative interaction, you'd still be married. Like, and you wouldn't, so you're
And it took courage to hang up.
Right.
Because she, in a way, has a certain amount of control over the kids.
Yeah.
It took courage not to suck up to her and do the thing we did in the relationship where I appeased her.
Yeah. Well, and she had emotional control.
Right.
In the relationship.
She had emotional control.
Yes. My ex-husband had emotional control in our relationship too. He was there's usually a hierarchy and, what is it your ex-wife says that the one who needs the other one the least has the upper hand or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that experience when I got an A in a college course in my first quarter at UCSD.
Yeah.
It was a moment where I felt empowered, and that was the success that I needed. Now, here I am with the podcast, a successful podcast. How many views we got on the YouTube?
I don't know.
Oh,
But it was the beginning.
we are going viral. We are kicking it. We are crushing it, as Tony Robbins says, right?
It was the beginning of breaking that pattern for you, and that's the whole point of what we're talking about is, identifying those negative patterns or places where maybe you've beat yourself up or whatever, and just getting a little win of switching that up and, drawing that boundary or, starting your day with positive self-talk instead of negative, or actually getting your shower or getting out of the house, or
it can be a really small thing.
Yes, whatever it is. And what happens is that snowballs and you start to build momentum because you'll feel better. It feels much better to get up, get out of bed, get showered and pull yourself together. I promise you will feel way better than if you just lay in the bed in your pajamas all day watching TV and eating ice cream.
Right. It builds your self-esteem.
That's right.
Which builds your confidence, which allows you to have more victories, and then and they build on each other.
Correct. Any parting words?
No, that's it. I think we said it all. Sort of.
We said it all.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for joining us. If you are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you are listening to the podcast, don't forget to rate and review us and also subscribe so you'll get notified as new episodes come out each week. And we will see you soon.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuuniversity.com. www.divorceuniversityonline.com.